Hi, this is Martin from Imagineer Systems, and welcome to this quick start for Mocha version 2. So let's start a new project. I'm going to import my clip. In this new project wizard we can set up our frame range we want to work with, the frame rate, the aspect ratio, and whether or not we're working with fields. We also have advanced settings to check our frame offset, whether or not we want to cache the clip if we're working from a slow network, and color parameters if we need to work with gamma or log and things like that. We can also decide where we want to keep the results of our tracking data, whether we want to do a default temporary location or within the folder that we've got our footage. So let's just click OK. Once we've got our footage in, we can begin to start to track and roto our scene. In this particular example, I'm going to track this guy's hand. You'll see here it moves in and out of light, there's motion blur, and the hand is turning slightly. Mocha uses a planar tracker to find patterns within footage. We can come up here to our Create X-Spline Layer tool and draw a simple rough shape around the object we want to track. We can then choose our options down here in the motion panel for translation, scale, rotation, shear and perspective to decide how we want this search area to look for the tracking information. So I'm just going to turn off shear in this case because we only need to use translation, scale and rotation for this hand, and I'm going to start tracking forwards. You'll see here that the planar tracker is now just looking for the features of this hand as it moves through the shot. Once this track is done, you can see that the spline has locked on. We can then turn on our surface data up here, which contains the tracking information. I can drag out my box here, and using the Q, W and E tools, I can move this box around to where I need it in the scene. I can adjust the corners, and I can preview what my track looks like by inserting a clip. We can also use this tracking information to assist with roto work. So I'm just going to turn off my surface and turn off my logo here, and I'm also going to rename this layer track and turn it off so I can start working on a bit of roto. I'll move to the start of the shot here, and I'm going to zoom into this thumb. Using my brightness scaler up here, I can ramp up and down the brightness in the scene so I can see a little bit better when I'm working with low contrast footage. Again, I'm going to use my X-Spline tool. You can also use X-Splines if you want to, that's just a different way of working, similar to the pen tool in other products. But in this case, I'm just going to trash that, I'll stick with the X-Spline. So I'm just going to draw a quick rough shape around this thumb here, and then we can go in and refine it. If you right click your tangent here, you can smooth all the points in one go. Let's just smooth that out. And let's just quickly take a look at a few of the view options here, which have been completely redesigned for Mocha version 2. I'll turn off my brightness, and now we can select our matte. This brings up the matte of the layer that we're working with. We've also got the option to show all mattes when we're working in a scene, or the selected track mattes. We can also use colorize to cut our roto out of the scene so we can work a little bit easier. And we've got the option of ramping up and down the opacity of the matte we're currently working with here. We can show just the selected layer we're working with or all the layers for our overlays. And we can choose just to use selected tangents and turn off the splines completely. If we have the splines turned off completely, it's a lot easier to get in there and find and refine our matte without the spline getting in the way. Once we have a roto shape that we're reasonably happy with, we can then actually link this roto data to the track we made for the hand. I'm just going to call this layer thumb mat, and I'm going to turn off its tracking. I can then come down to this link to track option and choose track. When I move out, you'll see that the thumb information is now linked to the tracking data that we did before. We can then go in and refine any small points where the hand might be turning slightly. So if I come here, I can move in here and just adjust a little bit. So you can see a lot of the manual work that is normally associated with roto can be greatly reduced by using this planar tracking link. Once we're reasonably happy with the roto and the track that's linked to it, we can also render out our mat. Up here we can see the thumb mat. If I turn my mat off, you'll be able to see that, and I'll turn off my overlays. And this mat can be rendered out using the export rendered shapes. New to the full version, in Mocha version 2 we also have motion blur, which can be rendered straight off the card for extra speed, and this will be physically accurate to the motion of the track. We can also adjust our parameters for phase, angle and quality. You're not limited to rendering, however. If I come back to my main view here, and I'll turn back on my overlays, we can take this shape data and export either the shape information or the tracking information inherited by this thumb into other applications. So let's have a look at the export tracking data options. You can choose an export format from the drop-down list here. Those who are familiar with lighter versions of our products, such as Mocha for After Effects or Mocha for Final Cut, will notice a lot more export options are available in this full version. We've got corner pin options for After Effects as well as transform data, Avid DS, Digital Fusion, Autodesk Systems, Final Cut, Motion Corner Pin, Nuke Corner Pin, Quantel and Shake scripts, as well as a standard XML motion matrix data format. We also have the options for the shape data. In the drop down here we have for combustion and flame, we've got a standard layer script format, Nuke Roto Paint, Shake, and Mocha shape data for After Effects and Mocha shape data for Final Cut. Once you've chosen your format, you have the option of either copying to the clipboard so you can paste it directly across to applications that support it, or the option of saving out a file if you need to import it. Now let's look at stabilization, which is new to the full version of Mocha. Stabilization is generally used to either lock down or remove jitter from a track. So I'm going to draw a new layer here to track this door in the background. Smooth that out a bit. And then using translation, scale, rotation, shear and perspective in this case, I'm going to track forwards. Because this is a fairly clear object, I'm actually going to reduce my minimum percentage of pixels down to about 20 just to speed things up. Because I've started in the middle here, I can track either backwards or forwards, so I'm just going to track backwards first. And then we'll track forwards. For the purposes of this example, I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to use the in-out tools to stop at this point. So I'll click there to limit my area to these in-out points, and then I'm going to expand that to the full timeline. You can restore this view at any point by going to the full frame range button here, and then you can readjust if you need to, say if I wanted to pull in here or expand out the other way. So let's just go back to the zoom tool here, and we can move to our stabilization tool. If I just zoom out a bit here, you can see that the stabilization has already started to move the footage in X and Y, because that's what comes in by default. So you'll see that it'll try and move around that point based on X and Y translation. In this particular case, because there's rotation in the scene and a little bit of perspective, I'm going to turn rotation on as well. And actually, let's put on zoom as well. So you'll see when I play back that the footage tries to scale and rotate around this point here. If you don't want such an excessive amount of stabilization to occur, you can limit the amount of frames it looks for jitter across the shot. Say for example I only wanted to find small bumps that happened over 2 or 3 frames, I could type in here 3, and then it would reduce the amount of stabilization that occurs, only finding those slight shakes that happen across those frame ranges. We also have the option of using maximum smoothing instead. What this does is actually smooths across the whole shot for the whole range. You would use this if you needed to really lock down a shot to paint something in, and then use the inverted stabilization to restore the motion later. If you still don't want such an extreme amount of motion to clip your shot so much, you can use this frame list down here by clicking on the plus button. This pops a frame back into full into shot, and then the stabilization will try and interpolate between those fixed frames. So if I move down here, you can see there's another extreme amount of stabilizations occurring here, so I can use the fixed frame list here and pop that frame back. It will then try to interpolate between those 2 fixed frames, and you can do this for as many frames as you like. Here's another example, I'll just pop that in. And then when we play back, the stabilization is reduced to interpolate between those. Once we have this information, we can then export again out to stabilized tracking data. This gives us all the same options as you get with tracking, except it works to export the stabilization instead. Once you've chosen your format, you can also choose to export an inverted stabilize if you need to restore your stabilization after locking down a shot. So that wraps up this quick start to Mocha version 2. In the next series of videos, I will show you how to get your data into other applications. This has been Martin Brennand for Imagineer Systems.